Right. All right. So we are live now. Let me play. That's nice.
All right, so when you come in, share the live, share the live. Let's start this thing. Let's start this thing here now. Let me go. I don't know. Right. Yeah. Touch up on this. So she only got one life. Can't stay on the job site. Make a memory for a lifetime that could last. Yeah, come on, baby. Knock a glass with two eyes. She don't catch feelings, she catch flights. So she coming back to the sunshine paradise. Lauren says, go down to New York City. Says she coming home cause she must have to play. Right. Lauren says, go down to New York City. Says she coming home cause she must have to play. If she body. All right, so good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Dauntless Defenders of Good Governance. Let me just change this thing here. I don't know why this banner is here, but welcome to Dauntless Defenders of Good Governance. So I am your host, the Fearless Warrior, and we are live. Let me just change this thing here. You don't need to see that. I need to see this. So we are live. I do have a video that I'm going to be playing. And we are ready to start the show. So it's about good governance, and we are talking about good governance.
UNC must win the next general election. And let me state what the national community already knows. The UNC's inability to win the next elections or any elections stems from the continued failure of the leadership of Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. I saw a news article this morning saying that Kamla said that she will serve till the end of her days. That means that it will be opposition for the UNC until the end of her days. I would prefer not to be so open and or harsh, but I just cannot in good conscience stand by and watch as the UNC party, which was born out of the struggle of our forebears and built with the sweat, the blood, and the virtuous ideals deteriorate under her. We must be clear in our minds that a legitimate critique of her leadership and her leadership tenure is not an attack on the UNC party. The UNC existed before Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, and it will continue to exist after her. So, while I am compelled by my duty to discuss some harsh realities, I do so in the unwavering commitment to building a better united national Congress. After losing 2 consecutive general elections I have seen nothing from Mrs. Prasad Bisesa that indicates she has learned from her mistakes or indeed she has the capacity to correct them. Brothers and sisters, we can't keep singing the same old song that the best government ever was under Kamla, when after winning in 2010 with 29 seats to 12 PNM, we proceeded to lose the 2015 general elections, and again in 2020. We can't keep fooling ourselves. So the foremost priority must be to restore confidence in the UNC's leadership so that they can deliver the population from the clutches of the PNM. In a modern democracy, there is no place for leadership without accountability. Leaders in general must be challenged if their actions are falling below what is constitutionally, morally, and reasonably expected of them. But in Trinidad and Tobago, the opposite seems to prevail, and the unwillingness to take responsibility, resign, and make way for new leadership after a failure is a symptom of our time, unfortunately. We must all ask ourselves, under the democratic system that we follow, why has it been so seemingly dishonorable to challenge the leadership of the incumbent? After all, a party should be run on principles, not personalities. It is not a royal family affair. It is political suicide to throw your name in the leadership ring under the present UNC regime. You see, blindly following a party leader will never allow us to find our way back into government. Too many issues of credibility. And we do have issues of credibility and alleged wrongdoing, which will never be shaken off. How then can we expect to be relevant to today's intelligent and discerning electorate?
Yes. So, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Yes, so good evening to all our Bounce Up Central, Bounce Up personnel, all our technical director, and everything. Just heard from the one of them, who is apparently right now under a lot of pressure. Yes, good evening, Mr. David, Patricia McKenzie, so much Daniela. A number of you all are starting to lock on, share the live when you come in. Yes, and I do have a special guest in the house tonight. I do have a special guest, and he's an international financial consultant. I think he's a consultant, and let me please bring on Mr. Vasant Bharath, because I want him to weigh in this thing here. And what Mr. Ramboli, no. I wanted to weigh in what Mr. Ramboli would have been saying. That's all right. Let me just put you on stage here, Mr. Why is that? Right. So, let me just see here, Mr. Bharat.
Hi, good evening.
All right, so yes, well, in all technology is good these days. Good evening, Mr. Nanson. Hi. So, Mr. Mayor, after listening to what Mr. Rambley would have said and would have made his comments on in terms of the leadership of the United National Congress not wanting to step down and allow new blood to go into this organization, what is your take on the whole leadership position at this particular time as it relates to the UNC?
Well, good evening to all your listeners and your viewers. In the world from which I come, at the end of the day, the buck always stops with the leader. And obviously, in whatever endeavor you are, whatever field you operate, success or winning or profitability is what determines whether you're successful or whether you are a failure. In the case of the UNC, they've been failing since 2013, in fact, when in 2013 we lost the THA elections 12-0. Then we lost the Shagona seat to Mr. Warner. Then we lost the seat to Mr. Dial Singh, which was the Herbert Volney seat. And then that very same year, we also lost 5 regional corporations when we went from 11 corporations down to 6. And of course, the losses continued all the way through to 2015 general election. And then, of course, several by-elections and local government elections between 2015 and 2020. And then, of course, another general election loss in 2020. So if Mrs. Bissessar is to be measured based on her success in terms of winning elections, whether general, local, or by-elections, then clearly the objective onlooker will think and believe that she has failed and failed miserably. And that's the reality of where the UNC is. The UNC, as Mr. Rambley said, is looking like it's likely to lose another general election under Mrs. Bissessar's continued leadership. And I think what's happened is that everybody understands that the purpose of being in politics is to get into government. And if you're unable to get into government, then it's pointless staying in opposition and just complaining for the sake of complaining and griping for the sake of griping. You've got to do whatever it takes to get into government. And I think Mrs. Bissessar has shown that she is not aware of what it takes. And she doesn't have the skill set to take the party into government.
But Mr. Vasant Bharath, are you still a member of the UNC?
I am, but I have been saying these same things since 2015 when I voluntarily, I must remind everybody, I voluntarily resigned from the Senate. I decided that I'd had enough. I felt that this was not going anywhere, that we were basically wasting time unless we could restructure the party, rebuild the institutions of the party from ground up, which is rebuilding party groups, rebuilding constituency executives, holding the appropriate national conventions, which is the Congress and the Assembly, have all of your arms of the party working effectively, like your women's arm, your youth arm, and so on and so forth. I felt that unless we did that, we were basically a pickup side, and we were only getting together almost as a mob for election day. And that is a hit or miss situation. You cannot depend on your competitor failing for you to succeed. No great organization across the world, whether it's political or not, has ever succeeded by hoping that their competitor will just fail and fall by the wayside and they'll be the last one standing. And it appears that is a strategy from the UNC currently and Mrs. Bissessar, that people are going to hold their noses and vote against the PNM, and she'll be left standing with a few seats that will take to victory. I'm not so sure she's correct on this.
So last time we would have seen that when you spoke out, well, they literally started to call you like, well, I don't know. Well, I know the term Nimakaram, whether they're trying to call people within the Hindu community, they call them Nimakaram, because we had the Ramjagji, then we had then yourself and a few others, and now we are seeing 5 MPs breaking off from the party, and they are being told, at one point in time, at one meeting, they were being, the audience were being jailed to tell things as these 5 MPs called for them to be removed, fired from the opposition. I don't know how you could fire an opposition person, but they were being called to be fired. And then we see Kamala Prasad, the opposition leader, basically having this thing called what we call picking her side for who she wants to go for the 2025 election, and now saying after the fact she wants to have internal elections for the party. What is the mix-up that is going on there within the party? Is it that she wants to have the internal election, or she's picking her side and then saying, have the election, I don't want to hear any in my party because I will have my own pick-up side coming eventually?
So in theory, the internal elections are due on the 24th of June, which is exactly 2 years after the last internal elections were held. Now, the NATEX elections, which is the elections for the national executive, does not coincide with the leadership elections, according to the constitution of the party. So the constitution of the party specifically states that the national executive elections are held every 2 years, and the position for leadership is held every 3 years. And there's a reason for that. The constitution was so written to allow a national executive to straddle so that a leader can actually have a whole year with a new national executive to actually, inculcate them in what's happening with the party, what the party's been doing, and so on and so forth. Over the last 14 years, Mrs. Bissessa has ensured that she has illegitimately and unconstitutionally brought forward her leadership election to coincide with the national executive election. So in other words, her leadership position has been held every 2 years in line with the national executive elections. And there's a reason for that. She has never wanted a national executive that she could not work with or felt she could not work with. So she had to be at the head of a slate so that she could go to the members of the party and basically say, vote for my slate. So you voted for an entire slate. You didn't vote for individuals based on merit or based on track record or based on experience. You voted for those people because you happen to be on her slate. So that's the first thing that has been happening over the last 14 years, which is unconstitutional according to the party's constitution. Now, realistically, it is the national executive that determines who in theory that is, the national executive puts together what's called a screening committee, and they're the ones in theory who determines who the prospective representatives are going to be in each constituency. Now, one would expect that if you're going to hold national executive elections when they're due in June 2024, which is in a couple of months' time, you would allow the new national executive to choose the representatives. You would not want the existing national executive that sits there today to choose who your representatives are going to be for 2025. So therein lay the issue, because Mrs. Bissessa decided she was going to hold nominations for representatives of the party, and she was going to do screening all before the national executive elections took place. In other words, she was going to screen out those people she felt that were so-called dissidents, using the old national executive and then hold new national executive elections with those people out of the scene altogether. So this is where Rushton Parry and a few others decided that clearly by her actions she did not intend to hold internal elections, and so therefore this is why they started calling for it possibly earlier than had been expected, because they very well expected her not to hold internals. Now, maybe she's going to be forced to hold internals, but if she screens them out before then, in other words, if I think nominations have closed, screening is probably taking place now. So if they are screened out of the process, so let me give you an example. Rushton Parry is currently the MP for Mayal. Dinesh Rambali is currently the MP for Chaguanas West. Anita Haynes, Tabakit, right? Let's assume that they go to screening within the next month and they are not put back as MPs in those areas. So in other words, you're now going to have a new person in each of those areas that are going to be potentially the MP. So what that does is it renders those three candidates and the others who are with them, the other two, is going to render them almost useless. They're going to be attending Parliament with no voice, they can't do anything in their constituency. They're going to be essentially emasculated by Mrs. Bissessa. So they have to now think very carefully as to what their plan of action is going to be if it is that she screens them out before the internal election takes place. But it is these are the kinds of political maneuverings really intent on keeping the leader where she is, keeping those who support her loyally and blindly around her where they are, that has led to the demise of the party. Because those on the outside who are looking in, the objective voters who the UNC needs to win a general election, these are not the kind of antics that they look on very favorably, because they believe that if you do that within your own party, if you get into a leadership position for the country, then you're going to run the country's affairs in exactly the same way, which is a very undemocratic way. So, people are not stupid anymore. They're looking on. They are making their judgments. I don't think many people like what's going on with the current government. They think that a lot more can be done in many areas like crime, unemployment, healthcare, education, and so on, jobs and so on. But I don't think they're going to hold their noses and vote for the current UNC, unfortunately.
But let me ask you something. Now, I've heard that Kamala Prasad keep asking about the whole spending of funds and government spending and all different things. But who determines the spending in the UNC and where funding will go within that organization?
Well, I hear Mr. Rambali asking about accountability for funds that have been collected. I have to tell you, in all of the years that Mrs. Bissessa has been leading the party, I have not seen any account for party funds. I know that when Mr. Pandey was there, we would have regular meetings with regard to with the treasurer, looking at funding, where the funds are being spent, how much money we had as a party. Mr. Rambali raised the issue, I think, on that clip, or as part of that press conference that he had. And I don't think anybody can tell you, other than Mrs. Bissessa, how much money the party has, how much money is collected over the years, how much money has been collected from MPs. I know as a member of parliament, I had to donate to the party out of my salary every month. I don't remember how much it was. I think it might have been either 5 or 10%, I don't remember, on a monthly basis. And I think that that practice still continues. I don't think anybody knows where that funding has gone and how it's been spent, and there's been very little accountability for it. So that's a question that Mr. Rambali has raised, but I don't suspect he will get an answer for it.
So wait. So even that the party don't have, well, it may appear as though they have a structure constitutionally with a constitution, and they may look as though they have a structure, but they really don't have a structure. Because the leaders really the whole structure of the whole organization.
So I've said on many occasions, the UNC has now become a cult. It's all surrounded about keeping this one person in office at all costs. If you have any criticism of the way things are being run, you're sidelined, you're pushed to the side. She surrounded herself basically with non-entities who have no other options in life. I always say, if tomorrow morning many of those people around her who continue to fawn at her feet and call her a goddess and so on, and call her name every 5 seconds in a parliamentary speech and on a platform, if those people had to come out of parliament tomorrow because they were out of office, they couldn't find a job. Nobody's going to hire them. So they have been selected for one purpose, and that purpose is to fawn at the feet of the leader, to ensure that they can recruit others to fawn at the feet of the leader, because their own survival is dependent on the leader's survival. And that's unfortunately the way it is. So there is no structure to answer your question. There are no party groups. There are no functioning constituency executives. The party only meets for critical events when, for example, they need to show that they're holding a National Assembly or a Congress. For example, a Congress is due every quarter. I can guarantee you that in the last 5 years, the UNC's probably had 2 or 3 Congresses, not per year, but over the last 5-year period. So the Constitution has been thrown in the dustbin. Everything depends on what the leader wants on a particular day. And unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Wait. Now, you said that if it is that they're dependent on the leader for the survival. So if it is that Kamala fired them in the morning, nobody will hire them the same.
Who is going to hire some of those characters who sit on the benches of the lower house in the UNC, under the UNC's banner? Who's going to hire them? Who's going to hire Khadija Amin or Barry Padarat or Rati Ram or Mohit or they have never achieved anything in their lives. They've never worked in their real life. Many of them have been fired for extortion and different things over the years in different roles. It's a matter of public knowledge. So no one's going to hire them. I continue to ask us, if you go to any small businessman and you ask him, which one of those characters will you, if you're going away on a month's holiday, which one of them would you put to run your business? That's just the reality of that. You may laugh, my brother, but at the end of the day, these are people, unfortunately, who could become ministers of government. And that's why it's important to speak out against it. Because if we want a Trinidad and Tobago where our children and grandchildren can live and not have to flee and become refugees in other countries, we've got to make sure that we put people in charge and people in place who are competent to run the affairs of the country, and not simply because they are party hacks. And that's the reason I continue to speak out.
So wait. No, but Mr. Bharath, what you're telling me is that if they can run their own house and they want to run the country, and some of them are questionable, then why are people going to put their vote next to somebody who's questionable? Because Mr. Ramsey did talk about some people who have questions behind the name, but why would the country want to put their name, put their vote behind some of these questionable characters who have baggage behind them?
Well, I think you know the question. I think you know you're asking me an answer there. At the end of the day, we know that people vote based on race, and they vote for either party. There are groups of people who will vote regardless of who you put in those seats. So it doesn't matter who the UNC puts in Couva North or Couva South or in, Chaguanas West or whoever the PNM puts in St. Anne's or, Laventille or any of those seats, people will vote for those candidates because they're voting for the party. They don't think, you see, what I keep telling people is that you have to start thinking about yourself and you have to start thinking about your family and what is best for you. And if it is that you start to reject the candidates who are foisted upon you because they're incompetent, there are many candidates who have been incompetent candidates. Citizens complain about them and the leaders put them back for our next term, right? Take that. So, and the people stay quiet and they go and vote for them again. And I'm saying to you, we have to start thinking as a population, what is good for us? When we open the pipe in the morning, will we get water? When we go out this road tomorrow, will our garbage be picked up? Will our drains be cleaned? Will our children be able to go to school? Will the potholes be fixed? Will we be able to come home safely because we haven't been shot on the street? Will we still have our job tomorrow? Will we be in a position to buy food to put it on our tables? Would we be able to put gas in our car? Would we be able to afford the rent this month? We have to start thinking about employing people because that's who politicians are. They're employees of the people. So we have to say, are we prepared to put aside this nonsense that we've voted on for the last 50 years? I tell people, everything in the world has changed. Everything. Your cell phone, you look at your cell phone here, right? We have GPS, we have remote controls, we have microwave ovens, we have Google, we have StreamYard that we're talking to now. The world has changed completely in the last 50 years. We have electric cars, we have driverless cars, we have people going to all over the outer space. We have all kinds of things happened in the last 50 years. But you know what? If someone had gone to sleep 50 years and wake up today, they will realize the politics is exactly as it was 50 years ago. We still practicing the politics of Eric Williams and Capildeo today. Race politics, divide up the population is either is African or is Indian. You're either knife and fork Indian or is rural Indian. You're either 1% or you're 99%. Politicians are just continuing for their own self-serving activities to divide up the population. I want to ask you this: outside of an election period, if an international observer came to Trinidad, they would see all of us living as one people. We're eating out of one pot, we're drinking out of one bottle. You go to a cricket match, you go to a football match, everybody is one, right? Everybody is one. Mm-hmm. Yet still, come election time, it's two different set of people. And it's our politicians who cause that. And it is to make sure that they stay in their respective positions, which is a position of power, and they keep the rest of us as basically just, voiceless. And that is, ask yourself, the only time an ordinary citizen has any say in this country is every 5 years when they go to vote. That's the only time. The only time. We don't have anything like a referendum. Yeah, we have no say really in where our future lies, which direction our future takes. We basically gobble up whatever the politicians do, and they continue to divide us on issues. Look, a good example, whether right or wrong, everybody is taking sides on the issue with the Auditor General, right? With the Auditor General and the Minister of Finance. Those who support UNC have taken the side of the Auditor General. Those who support the PNM have taken the side of the Minister of Finance. Very few people actually know the real facts. Am I correct?
Yes.
Right? Because divided up like that.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes. No, well, you may have people who will support the Auditor General. You have people who will support the government, but the government has put an investigative team to actually investigate what really went wrong and to see whether or not and how we could proceed in terms of resolving the situation between the Auditor General and the state, because at the end of the day, the Auditor General is an independent organization by herself, but the government has a role and responsibility to run the country, and they have to take care of their duties also. So people might want to carry down a political road, yes, but we have to make sure we get all the facts first before we can make a decision on what really went on, because at the end of the day, we have to look at this is our money that is jumping up like a
and I'm in agreement with you, but what I'm saying is that people have already taken sides without the benefit of the investigation taking place. Correct? People have already taken sides. So if you listen to certain radio stations during the day, the ones that are partial to the UNC, you will find that they've taken one side, and the ones that are partial to the government have taken another side. So we are split down the middle on a non-political, something that should not be a political matter. We've split down the middle on politics, and I'll tell you, as a direct result, probably of race. If the Auditor General was not of that race, you may not have had the same level of anxiety and the same discussions that we're having today.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't really say that, Mr. Bharath. To be fair, really and truly, because look, we have the DPP, and the DPP is not of East Indian or Hindu religion, and he is under a lot of pressure, because at the end of the day, it comes down to your competency and whether or not you can do the job. And the DPP, yes, have a lot of questions to answer in the department, and people are answering these questions to the DPP, and regardless of whether or not if he is of this race or that race, because at the end of the day, he's the DPP of the country, just like the Auditor General. So whether she's of the Indian race or whether she was African race or whatever race, I would want to know, because you are financial, or you are dealing with finance. If you take a dollar, and the dollar is, let's say, you doing your accounts and you see a dollar missing, you would want to make sure where that dollar gone. So
I'm in complete agreement with you. I'm in complete agreement with you on this matter. I'm just telling you that basically we look at everything as not all of us, of course, but those who blindly support either side will take sides on these matters. It's as simple as that. And until we start to become, and until we as a population become more mature and start to think for ourselves a little bit more and start to consider what is best for us, our families, our children, and vote according to that, then we are always going to have misfits and incompetence being foisted upon us by the leaders of this country. And then we are going to always get the results that we deserve. Because if you pick up somebody who has never worked in their life, somebody who is a complete incompetent idiot, like some of the people sitting in the parliament today, and they become ministers of government, what can you expect as the output from them? They become Minister of Health or Minister of Works, Minister of Local Government, Minister of Finance. What can you really expect? It's like picking up a vagrant and say, come and run Massey. What outcome will you expect if you get that? The place will bust.
Well, let me ask you this question, and I'm glad you talk about that, because here it is. I don't know if you would have heard what would have transpired with the Bishop, and how tight-lipped this thing is really and true. But I heard a pastor saying that it was some underworld person she must went and meet and all different things. But in your opinion, is Khadija Amin really fit to be in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago? knowing that she has this baggage behind her, because I don't want to say something that she may turn around and say, no, that is not so. When we, the public, may have the idea, know what it was that went on tonight, because of social media and cameras so live. But when you are put Tanisha Means as a minister, if you were in charge of the UNC, would you have put her as a minister or even as an MP?
Well, I know Khadija more than most people because she was the councillor in the Tunapuna Piarka Regional Corporation when I was a member of parliament. So she reported to my office in those days as a councillor, or she did work in that constituency. Her record was terrible. I think it was amongst the worst that's ever existed at Tunapuna Piarka Regional Corporation. In fact, when she came for screening, her attendance register was brought to Mr. Pandey, and I think she was missing for 70 or 80% of meetings, and the ones that she did attend, she was always late. But I had the very same experience with her at my meetings, public meetings. She would always turn up late, and so on. So her work ethic is poor. Her behavior obviously leaves a lot to be desired, and my issue is that anybody who you see, but I can't blame the MPs. I have to blame the person who's put them there, and that falls squarely at the feet of Mrs. Bisessa, because she knows all these characters from before. She's had reports on all of them. All the ones who have question marks hanging over them, Mrs. Bisessa is very well aware of their characters and what they've been up to in the past. So we have to be concerned as citizens, as ordinary citizens, as to the examples these people are setting for young people who are looking on. So I always say that young people are going to look at leaders, and people in parliament are leaders in their minds, as exemplars and as people whose behavior they will attempt to mimic or attempt to copy. So we can't look at the way children are behaving in school and the violence that's playing out and the bullying and the behavior that's taking place in school and believe that it just happens it just happening just so. They are looking on, and whether they're consciously or subconsciously copying MPs and copying the behavior of our leaders in different parts of society, that is what you're seeing playing out in our schools and how their behavior is and so on. So it is, listen, there's a saying that I came across many years ago, and it's very true. And it says, the culture of an organization will descend to the lowest level of behavior that the leader is either prepared to accept or engage in. And the leader is prepared to accept and engage in that type of behavior herself. And so therefore, as a result, the minions around her will continue to behave in that manner too. So the incident you're talking about, really, yes, they've tried to keep it quiet, but the entire country knows about it. But I guarantee you that when Khadija goes for screening, because she's one of the fawners, the loyalists, she'll be put back in a safe seat again. And the cycle continues. So again, all of these are issues that I think Mr. Rambali and others have in terms of the kinds of organization that the United National Congress has become. It has descended into very immoral type of indisciplined behavior, and it's reflected in the kind of results that you see over the last 14 years.
But let me ask you this question, Mr. Bharath. Currently, you have an MP who is part of maybe one or two other MPs in Parliament who are part and parcel of what a judge would have said was behaving like cartel-like behavior in terms of the EMDB, I think it is, the EMMCD. Is it that Mr. Munilal, knowing that he is before the courts of Trinidad and Tobago, do you think that he should step aside from the UNC and allow the UNC some form of breathing space and not be hindered with that cloud of corruption that is in the press, but that he is now before the court on?
Well, modern day behavior is such that you really don't step aside, and we like to conveniently talk about the Westminster system when it's convenient for us, but when it's not convenient, we tend to ignore it. So Mrs. Bissessa had asked Mr. Warner to step aside and until his name had been cleared. Clearly, she has not sought that same outcome or result from Dr. Munilal. Now, having said that, the matter is before the court, and I can't comment on, whether there's any guilt involved until that matter is heard. So, legitimately speaking, he has every right until his matter is resolved, if he wishes to do so, to stay on as a member of parliament and be elected as a member of parliament. There's nothing in our laws or our constitution in Trinidad and Tobago that prevents someone who's being charged from becoming a member of parliament or putting forward his name as a member of parliament. So, I mean, that is a matter that's before the courts, and we'll have to wait and see what the outcome is. I mean, obviously, if he's convicted subsequently, then that's quite a different story.
But wait. Mr. Bharath, let me say okay. Because we just spoke about whether if somebody was if they were of a particular race or if there was a next race, if they would have faced the same branch as what the Auditor General and to show the comparison with the team. My thing is, and I'm going to ask you this question, knowing that you have a sitting member of parliament who went before the court, and the court, the judge said to him, not me saying it, the judge said it to him, that there were cartel-like behavior happening with the whole EMMED and the work that was going on there. He is charged and gone before the court. Don't you think that Shamla Prasad Bissessa should have sent to Mr. Munilal? And I want you to be clear, because I know you're the political thought in this, but I want you to be clear with it. Do you think that Shamla Prasad Bissessa should have said to Mr. Munilal, hey, go and play your name and come back?
Well, if she is to be consistent, based on what I've just said, she asked Mr. Warner to do that, right? So if she's going to be consistent in terms of how she handles the affairs of the party, and she's not seen to be favoring one person over another, you see, one of the most important things in politics and in life generally is that you must display a level of consistency. In other words, if someone, and particularly if you're a leader, those who report to you as a leader, they want to know that if Mr. X behaves in a certain way and Mr. Y behaves in the same way or a similar way, they will be treated equally and not differently. That level of consistency brings a level of calm across, and a level of discipline also across the organization. But if you don't know how the leader is going to behave, one day is this, one day is that, for the same kind of behavior and up and down and all over the place, that brings chaos to an organization. And so therefore, if she were to have treated Mr. Warner with Mr. Dr. Munilal in the same way as she treated Mr. Warner, then rightfully she should have asked him to go and clear his name and come back. Now, I want to tell you that if that were me, I would have resigned. I would have resigned and said, listen, I know I'm innocent. I'm going to clear my name. And once my name is cleared, I will come back, if there is an opportunity to come back. But again, you see, it's the example we want to set for the upcoming generations that's important. It's either we are self-serving or we want to set the right example for future generations. And that's a personal position. But I think this is where real leadership comes to the fore, and they set the tone for how, not just how they behave, but how those that report to them also behave.
So, in your mind, Mr. Bharath, if you had a choice to pick somebody as a leader for the UNC, other than Kamala Prasad, who would that be?
There's nobody in the UNC currently that can take the party into government. And that has been deliberately engineered by Mrs. Besessa. She's gotten rid basically of all the people who are relatively strong, who have national appeal. She's gotten rid of all of them. As I said before, I chose to voluntarily resign because I didn't want to be a part of that. But the people who have capacity, they've all been removed. The Fuad Khans, the Botiwaris, the Ram Narains, the Fazal Karims, they were all removed unceremoniously to make way for the Khadijas and the Ratirams and so on. So there's nobody, God forbid if something were to happen to Mr. Besessa tomorrow. Well, I suspect, as Mr. Ramali said there, that he that she's recently stated that she's going to stay on until she dies or until her last breath or whatever it is indicative of the fact she intends to stay there until she passes on, and whether the party survives after that, I don't think it matters to her.
So, well, Ms. Ola Hingston is asking this question. Is it that Jack Warner was gaining more support than Kamala, and she sent him on his way?
That obviously, I don't know if that's true, but Mr. Warner was exceptionally popular because of his work ethic. I think it's common knowledge that Mr. Warner got up at 3 o'clock every morning or 2 o'clock every morning. He got very little sleep. He maybe slept 2 or 3 hours every night. And he was a very good MP in his constituency, hence the reason why when he fought as an independent in Shogunas West in 2013, he actually beat the UNC candidate Khadija Amin by, I think, almost 4-1. And I think it's the first time in the history of our country that a person actually won 51 out of 51 polling divisions. So he was immensely popular. It's not something that this leader likes too much. So who knows? Who knows?
So, with Jack Warner coming back into the fold, now, do you think that she will put him under her wing to go up for the internal election? Because she went up for that place. So do you think that she will put him under her wing in order to win that internal election that is coming up in June?
Well, it's a question of whether Mr. Warner is prepared for frontline politics again. I mean, remember, we're talking about a Mr. Warner who is 10, 12 years older than he was when he was in government. He's obviously an extremely energetic man, but clearly, I mean, with all of us, age does catch up with us after a while, and I'm not sure if he would want to become involved. But Mr. Warner continues to remain a huge political asset because of his very active brain and because of his network over the years that he's developed. He's a formidable political opponent. So she would obviously want to have his heir. She would want to have his counsel. But whether Mr. Warner feels that he wants to get back into the rough and tumble of political warfare, I am not sure. That will be entirely up to him. He will certainly be an asset if she had him on the team.
And I like this question. Eh? So if it is that Jack challenged Kamala, and would he have won given the ethnic makeup of the UNC?
If he were to, I'm sorry, I missed the question.
If Jack Warner had challenged Kamala, would he have won given the ethnic composition of the UNC?
No, because you see, when the internal elections are fought in a few battleground constituencies, essentially. Siparia, Cuba North, Cuba South, a lot of maybe 4 or 5 of the heartland constituency areas where Mrs. Bisesa has thousands and thousands of people who blindly support. They have always supported. They are people of a certain demographic, between a certain age range, of a certain religion, and they will just blindly vote for her. And there's enough of those in those 4 or 5 heartland constituencies. Naparima is another one, where they will just vote. And there is not enough UNC supporters across the rest of the country, and particularly on the East-West corridor, that can make up the difference that would be required to surpass the votes in those constituencies. So no, on a one-on-one based on for the internal elections, she will continue to win.
But Kamala the UNC has moved from basically from having, well, it was 12 seats, I think at one time, 12 or 16 seats. They move up a little bit. They now have 19 seats now. So the UNC only focuses on their hardcore base and not the East-West corridor. Why?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, the party's had 8 years to become a national party. The party is no longer a national party. Remember, we don't fight Tobago. UNC doesn't compete in Tobago. They compete in Trinidad. So they're down to 39 seats. And in the local government election, they gave up most of the East-West corridor to Gary Griffith. So basically, they have said to themselves and to the population at large, listen, we can't win the East-West corridor. We are going to concentrate on our 15 seats, 16 seats down south, and we're good to go. So, but they've had 8 years. They've squandered 8 years. They had 8 years to build a national party. They had 8 years to go to the population across the country, Trinidad and Tobago, and tell them what they were going to do for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They had 8 years to actually bring new people in that looked like Trinidad and Tobago, not just for cosmetic reasons when an election is called. They had 8 years to go to the young people of this country, people who have never voted before and who have come out of school at the age of 18, to go and tell them, look, we want a different kind of politics for you guys. You're the future of this country. We want to show you what you can achieve in Trinidad and Tobago. We want to do what's necessary to keep you guys here in Trinidad and Tobago and not to be looking to run to a different country. They had 8 years to do all of that and they did none of it. They are now looking to pick up with Philip Alexander and other little small parties to win a general election. That is a shame. That is an absolute disgrace to know that you've squandered 8 years and then now you're coming cap in hand to the population, basically, opposing for the sake of opposing everything the government brings. You oppose it for the sake of, there's no rationale. And the people on the fence have seen through it. They're not going to vote for them. because they're not bringing anything that will improve the quality of the lives of the majority of people in this country. Those are the hard facts. I mean, listen.
Well, and I'm glad.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, I work all over the world. I've just come back from Cambodia. I'm working in Fiji. I'm working all over the world. And I understand different cultures and what makes up, but I also understand what it takes to win. I understand what it takes to do hard work. You don't just arrive at the doorstep of a victory without doing the background and the hard work leading up to it. And that is what the UNC has not done. It's not done the hard work that is necessary to convince the population that we are the better choice. So they are hoping that when an election rolls around, the population will basically hold their noses and say, look, we hate the PNM, we hate the Prime Minister, we hate all them people, and we're going to hold our noses and vote for the UNC. And I'm afraid that's not going to happen.
But let me bring it to the issue of coalition now. And we are seeing where guys are saying that some people are asking on the chat about the guys that sit and Philip Alexander, Bacchanal, that's going on, who should be in the UNC and who should be in the UNC. In your estimate, does any of these fellows belong or should be part and parcel of any coalition with the UNC?
Well, first of all, that's a decision that they have to take, whether they want to get involved with the UNC. The reality is that the population is disappointed with coalition politics because coalitions come together for the wrong reasons. Coalitions come together in Trinidad and Tobago just to win a general election. And because there's no foundational ideology that binds them together, essentially, they're just coexisting. And the first row that takes place, the whole thing mash up. And the population is fed up of that. The population wants a level of stability. They want a level of calmness. What the population basically wants is to be able to get on with their own lives, knowing that they can do the basic things in life that they want to do. They want to know that they can be safe. They want to know they could put food on their table. They want to know that they can have steady jobs. They want to know that their children coming out of school or university can get a job. Those are the kinds that they want to know when they turn on the tap in the morning, they could get water. They want to know that their drains are clean. Basic things, right? That's what the population wants now. They don't want to concern themselves that every Monday morning there's a fight and a cat fight between this partner in the coalition and that one, this one threatening to leave, this one threatening to bust mark. The population is fed up of that. They want a level of stability in their lives now that can say, okay, in the next 5 years, this is where the country is heading. These are the kinds of jobs that the country is going to be generating. These are the investments that are coming in from abroad that will create new businesses, that will create new jobs. The population wants to know that when they go to the hospital, if they're dreadfully ill, they can be seen to. They don't have to wait 2 years to get an appointment when they know that the life-threatening illness is going to kill them in 6 months. They want to know that their children, when they come out of school, they can get a decent job. All of these things. That's what the population wants to know now. They're fed up of the fighting and the infighting and the instability and the cussing and the meet me on the pavement, and they're fed up. They're just fed up. I lost you guys.
All right, just click back on the link and come back in.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
All right, will do.
All right. So we are back. We are back. Yeah. Well, let's read that. Yeah. Something is really wonder what is up with our connections in Trinidad. But so back to the question I was asking in terms of but I think you would have answered with Philip and Gary Griffith. But one question I want to ask, and I'd rather just talk about the youth in terms of the youth and what the youth will be watching and seeing, and they don't want to get up and hear the bacchanal every morning to this pollution. Kamala Prasad, the professor, would have made a statement saying, load up the clip, empty it, load it back up again, and empty it. Do you think it is fair for young people to be hearing this, knowing that you have a crime situation that the Prime Minister will have outlined that is epidemic? Do you think that the opposition was wise in making that kind of statement, especially in a local government platform?
Well, I come back to what I said about setting examples, and I'm on record publicly criticizing her for those very irresponsible and reckless statements. We have reached a stage where as a party, as a UNC, they're basically grasping at straws and it's what you call a populist type of thing. Whatever they seem to think is popular at a point in time with a grouping of people is likely to be what gets said. And to hell with tomorrow, it doesn't really matter. Tomorrow we'll change our minds and say something else and say we didn't say that last week, and so on and so forth. And therein lies the examples we're setting for our young people. It's an absolute disgrace. I distanced myself as a party member from those statements at the time they were made, and I made them publicly that I felt that they were irresponsible and reckless, particularly in light of the kinds of videos we were seeing circulated from young men, and to glorify that level of gangsterism from the highest order, from the highest office in the land on the side of the opposition, really is an absolute disgrace.
Hmm. So where do we go from here, Mr. Vasant Bharath? Knowing that the internal election is going to be coming up very soon, because I think it started for the month of June. Where do we go from here? Will you be going back up to contest the political leadership, and will you be allowed back into the UNC to contest that leadership position?
Well, there's nothing to stop me from competing in the internal elections. I'm still a member of the party, so any member of the party can actually offer their names to be elected as a member. The problem is, of course, as I've said before, Fuad Khan has said as well, many others before me have said, it's not a fair and democratic process. It is considerably tilted towards the incumbent, who has consistently ensured, for example, that the election list of members are not given to other people who are fighting the elections on time. The list is scrambled, so you don't get a proper list with names on it, with proper addresses. So, for example, when I fought, the list I got basically gave a name, gave the general area in which they lived, but no street addresses, no telephone numbers, no email address, no actual specific details to contact the person. So the list was basically just a waste of time, had to be thrown into the dustbin. All of the officers that will attend to the election, for example, the election committee is hand-selected by the opposition leader. The ballot boxes and the ballots are printed by somebody known to the leader of the opposition and nobody else. So there are a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of inaccuracies and a lot of areas that have been questioned that generally, because it's an internal election, would be ignored. I'll give you an example. One example I know for a fact, one of the things, amongst other things, that when I fought, I found that the ink that the people were dipping in their fingers in, you could just wipe it off with a tissue. And I made a complaint, and nothing was ever done about it. But then I subsequently found out that there were members of the party who had 3 and 4 different voting cards under different names, so they could vote 3 and 4 times. Because once you come back in, you wipe your finger, you can vote again. So those are all kinds of things that Fuad Khan will tell you the same thing. Ramona Ramlial will tell. Anybody who's competed against the incumbent and her team will tell you about all of the issues when you walk into a polling station, because all of her people are there. They will guide the people how to vote and who to vote for. And particularly when they're elderly people, and some of them are not the most educated, they will be led into a thing. Here, look, come and vote for the star, which is the logo of the team. Come and vote. You know who to vote for? Just put your name by the star, and that's it. And so there is a lot of it's a very undemocratic process, unfortunately.
Mr. Bharath, what you just outlined to me, that was the voting. That is basically even an election.
Well, this is a matter of public record. I mean, I have written, in the event that it ever comes out that I am trying to defame the organization, that's not true, because it's all factual. I have written on all of these matters, both publicly and to the party, with regard to these inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and basically fraudulent issues. I've written into the election committee. They have, because of course they elected or selected by the political leader, they have ignored those letters and so on. Dr. Khan would have done exactly the same thing in 2022. But unfortunately, the courts will not intervene generally in the affairs of a political party, or certainly not the internal affairs. And so therefore, it's kind of a waste of time taking the matter to court. And so therefore, to answer your question, no, I will not be participating in the internal elections of the UNC.
No, but Mr. Bharat, what you are describing there is what you will see happening in some countries where election is not free and fair. And is it that the UNC, they normally call for observers to come and observe the election, general election? Is it that if there's an internal election, do you think that observers, international observers, should come in and see how the opposition functions in an election?
Well, it's hypocritical of the opposition to call for observers at the national election when there have been so many complaints about the process for the internal elections. And of course, they would object to having internal observers for the internal elections. You know, if the leadership of the party so genuinely wants to portray that they want to be free and fair, they should not only call for observers for the national elections, they should lead by example and say, listen, we are prepared for the upcoming internal elections to have external observers come and observe our process. Because what that will do, it will certainly give the national population a great deal of credibility in the outcome of the election. And surely that's what you want. You're trying to create an air of credibility with the national population for them to believe truly that you are a transparent, accountable organization ready and willing to take government. So therefore, there's no reason why you ought not really to offer, without being asked, to offer to say we are willing to have external parties come and observe our election process to ensure that everybody can see that it is a true and accurate reflection of the will of the membership of the party.
Because that's disappointing. That's no, I've heard about voting machines. I've heard about all these different things, but it's disappointing to say no. And when you put it in your hand, it just disappears.
No, it doesn't disappear. You can wipe it off. You can wipe it off or wash it off very easily.
And it just goes, and you go and vote again.
Yeah, it's just like water. It's a water-based something. You can just wipe it off with a napkin.
So how are we to trust Kamala Prasad and the UNC if God forbid that they come back into office? How are we to trust that they can run the country properly if it is that they can't get their own internal governance structures and their own election running properly? How can we trust them?
Well, you know, there's a saying, a very old saying that says we get the government that we deserve, right? So if the population, based on all of the information that they have, choose either the PNM or the UNC again, the PNM again or the UNC, then they will get what they've chosen. I mean, and then they live with it. But you see, in this country, what we tend to do, as Ron Harford, the former chairman of Republic, said, you vote for either mooks or crooks. So you vote for the lesser of the two evils at a point in time. And I'm saying to the population that vote for yourself. Vote for the person that you think will do the best job for you. And if you start to think like that, then you will start to elect the best possible people, because then you are going to force the leaders of both parties to put competent people in place. And because you as a citizen is going to have the say that, listen, I do not want X. I want somebody else who can serve my interests better, because I'm fed up of not getting the level of service that I need. I am fed up of complaining on a daily basis, and I'm fed up of you not listening to me. That's the only way it's going to happen. If we stay quiet and say nothing and continue to vote the way we're voting, they will continue to do what they're doing. There's a saying that says, it's not my saying, I heard Denzel Washington say it many years ago. He said, if you want something you've never had before, you have to be prepared to do something you've never done before. And that is, you have to insist, do we want good governance? And that's why we started this program on governance. We have to insist on good governance, because that's the only way our lives are going to improve.
But one person here, Ms. Jackie, is asking, who are you referring to as Mook? Because Ronald Harper said one thing and then he said something else, right? But he said if you vote for Mook, but who are you calling the Mook?
I have no idea who he was referring to. I'm just paraphrasing what the man said. And basically, what he's saying, you have to vote for the lesser of the two evils, right? And I'm saying that we as a population have to start taking a stance that we are not prepared to just take what you want to shove down our throats. And it matters. It's an indictment on this country for an outside observer to hear that somebody in a position of authority who has achieved so much in his life can tell the population, your choice is to vote for either mooks or crooks. That is an indictment on our country and who we are as a people, that we will accept that, yes, that is a fact, that we are left with the choices of voting for mooks or for crooks. We should take that as a personal insult, that this is where we've reached.
Well, I was taking as a personal insult from a man called Ronald Harper, because he would have been benefiting off of us, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, because he running a financial institution, and they raise their charges for everything, and they make money off of your head when they do investment, and they still making more money off your head until they declare how much billions of dollars in profit, but they don't really give back that kind of money that they get back in taxes. But I'll leave it there with him, because he was even at different level in terms of the financial part. But let me ask you this as we look to wrap up here, Mr. Vasant Bharath. Do you think that the PNM is doing a good job in terms of running the economy?
Absolutely not. I think that, and because I work in many other countries of the world, I look at what other countries are doing with far less than we have in Trinidad and Tobago. We have all of the ingredients in Trinidad and Tobago to be an absolute paradise. Really and truly, we have everything. We have natural resources, we have great weather, we have beaches, we have very intelligent, bright people. We have great infrastructure. We have we had great infrastructure, which we have to build upon. We have everything here to make this country a great country, and a country where, as I say, we have the ability to attract the rest of the world to look upon us as a model country. But unfortunately, leaders generally, for their own self-serving purpose, take us down the wrong road. I worked in Venezuela 40 years ago, and no one could have ever thought that Venezuela 40 years ago, 35 years ago, would be what it is today, where 6 million of their people are finding refuge in other people's countries. We have to be careful that we are not creating a society in Trinidad and Tobago where we have a few haves and a lot of have-nots, and eventually it's going to explode into some kind of social implosion, and we're going to end up with a lot of people having no choice but to run from Trinidad and Tobago. We have to make some kind of intervention. The PNM and many of the ministers have become very arrogant. They've become very vindictive. Many of them are incompetent, and we can do a lot better than what is presented there. Unfortunately, they're allowed to get away with a lot of it because they are not held to account by an opposition who has a level of competence to hold them to account. So they become essentially a runaway government. And the worst thing that could happen to this country is that for the PNM to get a third term in office, because I think it's going to. I think they have become so detached with the suffering of the population, with the suffering of the poor man, with the suffering of the middle class, with the suffering of people who have no jobs, with the suffering of life generally in Trinidad and Tobago. They have become immune to the suffering of the ordinary man. And I think that's a terrible thing. And what we have in Trinidad and Tobago is essentially almost a pressure cooker of various pressures just building up. And all of us are just minding our own business, trying to make sure that we can look after ourselves and our family. We're not concerned about anything else. And we're just hoping that the bad things in life just don't happen to us. Let it happen to somebody else. We're no longer interested in our neighbors. We're no longer interested in our communities. And I'm broad brushing here, but because not everybody's like, but the general consensus is that we are very detached from our communities because our communities do nothing for us anymore. We have no pride in how we see our communities. There's no more community centers that are open generally for people to participate in after school and after work activities. There is nothing that is taking place that will uplift us as a country. We don't know where we are heading. We have no vision. You don't know what is fact, what is fiction. If you go to a police station, you don't know who is police, who is bandit. It is an atrocious situation that no one seems in the government to be in a position to correct. And I think they're leading us down a path, unfortunately, that is going to be very difficult to reverse.
But I beg to differ a little bit, Mr. Bharath, because the community centers are open. I can tell you that. All community centers are open and they are functioning and running because they have facilities going on. The member village councils have to make their own money basically by people renting these places and things. So they have to raise their own funds. You get no entities on their own. They have to pay taxes like everybody else now. In terms of the situation that you talked about in terms of crime, I think that the opposition has been blocking a number of the government because the government did support. Well, the government, when there was opposition at one point in time, which was back in 2010, they did support the UNC with a number of legislation, and now that the UNC is in opposition, they are not supporting any of the legislation when it comes to Parliament, but they're supporting it during the committee stages. I don't understand why they're doing that, because they can't tell me supporting it when we meet at the committee stage, but when we reach the Parliament, they're not supporting it. And little do they know that these things are recorded and put on paper, that you're supported here, but you're not supported here. Is it that the USC does not want the government to move the country forward? Because they're in their mind, if they make the government look good, people may very well go back and vote for the People's National Movement and not for them.
Yeah, so my perspective of that is a little bit different. The country will deal with the UNC for their obstructionist, what is perceived as the obstructionist manner in which they behave. The country will deal with them for that. But the PNM, on the other hand, the government of the day, cannot then throw their hands up and say, well, you know what? Because the UNC didn't vote for us, that is why crime is over. They have to find a way. The buck, as I said earlier on, the buck stops with the leader. So if it is that you're having a challenge in one aspect, you've got to find another way to deal with the situation. Okay, that is what life is all about, right? We can't throw our hands up and say, it's their fault. And so therefore, it is what it is. More people go dead and, well, it's UNC fault. No. Yes, I agree that the UNC could be more helpful. Yes, I agree that the population is looking on and they will deal accordingly with the UNC. Fine. But if I'm the Prime Minister, if I'm in charge as a result, I have to find another route to success. Because that's what I'm there for. I am paid not to make excuses. I am paid to find a solution to the problems that the citizens have. Simple story.
But hold on. But Mr. Bharat, but if it is that I come to you and I tell you that, okay, Mr. Bharat, we need your support on X, Y, and Z. Because at the end of the day, if I hold the bandit, all right, I catch the man, I bring him before the court. But because the law and the legislation is not in sync and it doesn't exist, then what are we telling the criminals? That it's okay to go ahead and continue doing what you're doing, and you get away and you go scot-free, while the person who died or probably was the victim, they now have the challenge of living with that whole psychological trauma that, hey, this man gave away with committing a crime against me, and the law didn't.
Yeah, so the fact is, if you were to look at our law books, we have more than enough laws. Laws are not passing laws, and that's just an excuse, and that's I mean, I've tried to be as objective as I can throughout this interview, right? At the end of the day, I am not attempting to take sides here with the opposition. I am saying to you, if I am the leader of the government, or I'm the Minister of National Security, and another organization is blocking me, I have to find a way using the existing laws. Let me give you an example. This morning I was listening to an interview with David West, who is the chairman of the Police Complaints Authority. Okay, and he was talking about getting information when, for example, this is a simple example, right? When a complaint is made against a police officer, which he has to investigate, they have great difficulty, or if somebody's been killed, for example, by a policeman, they have great difficulty in getting results from the forensics laboratory. Because why? They only have one person or two people to perform autopsies. So sometimes it takes months before they can get a report from the forensics authority. He talked about the health authorities and the hospitals. It takes, because of the bureaucracy involved and systems involved, sometimes it takes months, 6-8 months before, if somebody has been injured, somebody got a knife wound or whatever, it's a police officer involved, it might take 8-9 months to get a report from the health facility or the hospital to be able to lay charges or even to start to investigate the police officer. Those things don't need new laws. Those things need fixing the systems. That we have a backlog of over 40,000 people, 14,000 cases in remand right now, where young men and women go to remand and spend 3 and 4 and 5 years before their matters are heard. You don't need new laws for that. We need to ensure that the criminal justice system is working and working effectively. A lot of these young men go into prison in remand for petty theft and petty issues, and they come out as hardened criminals because they've spent 4 and 5 and 6 years in prison. Many people on remand, you may know, they spend more, when their case eventually comes up, they spend more time on remand than they would have been sentenced to for the crime that they had committed. And so therefore they have to be let go immediately as their case comes up. These are some of the issues that we have to resolve. We have, listen, I am one person. I live my life by one tenet, and that is I accept blame where blame is due. And I move on from there and I try to correct it and I move on. I don't try to fob off blame on somebody else for my own failure. And I think that that's what we do, our leaders do today, both sides. If this one fault, if that one fault. Take responsibility for what you've campaigned that you were going to do. It is your responsibility to work with the funds that you have, with the resources that you have, and to deliver results to the population so the population believes at the end of the day that the quality of their lives have moved on and gotten better under your tenure. That is the be-all and end-all of good governance. And this program started off about talking about governance. Governance is about the ability to direct and control the resources of any organization, but to hold people responsible and accountable for it. Not passing the buck, not blaming everybody else. You are responsible ultimately. Make it happen. If you don't make it happen, then you can't expect people to vote for you again. It's like a chief executive officer in an organization say, well, you know, boy, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that, and we bust this year and we bust next year and we make a loss this year because I had two managers who were not, they didn't listen to me. They weren't listening to me. Or I have a competitor who blocking me from getting into this market or for me selling into that supermarket. So sorry, but we bust because of that. No. What will happen to him? He'll be fired. He'll be fired because he didn't get the job done. Buck stops with the leader and with the organization that is leading the charge. That is what you campaigned on. That is what you will be judged on, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, okay, Mr. Bharath, I want to thank you for actually coming and being part and parcel of this discussion on good governance. And just give your mind, I tell you no, and I'm glad that you gave your mind and your perspective on the political arena. And I know that you will be called upon in other quarters to actually give your voice and opinion on the whole political landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. So I really hope and wish you all the success in your new endeavor as you travel all around the world in your financial capacity now in this new dispensation.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much. I hope that your viewers and your listeners weren't too shocked. But to me, if I'm going to spend an hour and a half talking to people, I'm going to say it as I see it.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Mr. Bharath, and we do appreciate you for coming on and being part of the Dauntless Defenders of Good Governance. So I want to thank him for really coming and being very a part of this. And I know we're going to have more and more on Dauntless Defenders of Good Governance, and more persons will be coming. And next week we will have another lineup coming. I'm not going to let out the cat or the bar yet, but we're going to have another interview on Dauntless Defenders of Good Governance. And tomorrow we have, we will have Culture Day, where we'll be talking about culture. And we will be coming with our technology on Monday, as we'll be having somebody coming on the program to talk about robots and technology. So we're going to have a whole lineup coming up very soon on Bounce Up Central, bounceup.com. Please go to the website, register, and join the family. But there was something that Mr. Bharath talked about that really and truly I'm going to talk about some fine points as we need more of the fine points coming up in a subsequent show. But really and truly, give justice. The government is functioning. And most of the things that are happening are being blocked. They are being blocked by the United National Congress. In fact, the United National Congress is basically telling the people, those upon this, those upon that, those do this, those do that, those do the other. And now you having certain technocrats who working in the ministries now, because now we're hearing with DPP, after we spent $55 million on a building, is now saying he didn't receive an 8,000-page document to sign. Now, if just does not send a clear message to say, hey, as Vasant Bharath said, you're not functioning, let me get rid of it. But then he's an independent organization, independent office. But really and truly, we can't have this stupidness continuing with the DPP, regardless of whether he's a what we quote unquote call African or Indian. Just like we can't have this stupidness taking place with the Auditor General. And these are the people, and what I keep saying, it's not the MP in the government that is causing the problem. Not the government causing the problem. Many of the blockage that is taking place is between the opposition and those who work in these so-called independent organizations or the independent military that are deliberately blocking oh boy, no, I don't think we want to breathe that blow this time. But I don't think we should breathe that blow this time. I don't know. But really and truly, I have always been saying that a lot of these technocrats, people who are working in these ministries, are deliberately doing what they're doing in order to make government look bad. It cannot be that you get $55 million. And let me tell you something. I am really amazed because it's not even Minister of National Security involved in this thing, but I'm really amazed that the fraud squad has not intervened and probe what is really a scandal with the DPP office. Really and truly, we as citizens must stand up and say, hey, as the Prime Minister says, it can't be business as usual. $55 million to jump up, every month, for building. That's not like what, A man walk away with $44 million. No, man. I don't care what race he is. you upholding the law and $55 million and still yes. I don't know. I don't know. I think you know the government really and the government is doing what it has to do in terms of moving and doing what they have to do to take care of the work. But it's whether or not the citizens of this blessed nation is ready to take responsibility for their own actions. Because they're complaining every day that they have police on the road. So you want the police on the road or you don't want the police on the road. They're complaining. They're getting too much tickets. They're complaining. And when you ask them, what are you complaining about? Isn't it not about getting you in line, making sure that you have good governance? They really say. Sometimes you know, I don't really what I want to know. But I don't think that goes for everybody, no. I think it only goes for a certain selected few who believe that they can go through the channel of joining with some political party to cause mischief in this country. Because you can't tell me, and this is serious business, you know. They're not a hairdresser. They're not this one, that one, that. It's serious business. 8,000-page document. How far did the DP office? It's from the court. And if it is that they send you an electronic copy, so you tell me, all right, you get electronic copy. They admit you get electronic copy. And you need to get the hard 4 copies. Yeah. No, David, I'm not by no KFC or other stuff I do KFC. What is happening, and I will say it and I'll forget you. When you're dealing with serious issues, I know for some strange reason, the internet, look when it tries to just cut me off and cut me off. But it's all that I'm doing. But I move, I'm moving, but you see when you're touching on serious issues, Some people doesn't want to, some people doesn't want to do so. But really and truly, it is serious issues that must be dealt with and must be brought to the forefront. So people, everybody just wants to know where we're going to have serious issues. And I think very unusually, sometimes when I hear the Prime Minister talking in a particular tone, there's because he's angry, vexed that certain things are happening. And because they are independent departments that not even cabinet probably to touch them and deal with the situation, I think he will be vexed about those things. Because those are the hindrances that we are getting constantly from moving this blessed country forward as a nation. And more things will be coming out more and more in the light concerning the DPP. Because I think it is time, really and truly, for the DPP to remove himself from the office. I think so. And I make no bones about it. I think the DPP should resign because you cannot tell me the DPP is on Richmond Street. The DPP office, right on Richmond Street. They are building on Park Street. They didn't want it. The court is on Pembroke. Right on Pembroke Street, Pembroke and there is South Street. They are anybody name of street. Right opposite the square. And you can tell somebody to just walk across the pick up that document. Bring back the 8,000 page document to start a case. A high profile case of all the Or you can be serious. People deal with it another. Definitely. It's basically 5 minutes to the hour of 10 o'clock. And I know that people have to go to work in the morning and those who may have to sleep. But I will deal with it. I will deal with it in fine point. And I will deal with it very and truly in some real hard talk coming up very soon. Hey, catch you on the other side. Let me hear some music to go out of here because it kind of cool down the brain. When you're really seeing a lot of foolishness, especially with the technocrats. And while I applaud Mr. Bharath and thank him for his contribution, I think he was playing. Let me keep it right here so that in case I get in, I will still have a chance to stay in. But we'll see. That's politics team. See you all next week when we go with Dauntless Defenders of Good Governance. And look out this Monday for another show, Technology in the Meeting. Let me get the song. Let me get my song. Yes, let me get my song. Right. Nice. Need to get my song to cool down the brain next week. Oh, yes. Let me go out with the
feeling it from my day. Oh no, no.
Listen, music.
Darling. She's a bacchanal every time she come my way. Look at the tongue when you dip down there. Sweetness, your apple, I won't try it. She's a carnival every time she touch down there. But the tongue when you hit my brain. Give me one look and I just fart it.